It's the 5-0 Kansas City Chiefs visiting the 3-3 San Francisco 49ers. Super Bowl rematch, Week 7. Locked on 49ers, Locked on Chiefs, crossover, the biggest stories, key matchups, and the paths to victory for these two teams coming at you right now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On NFL Podcast Network crossover episode. We've got Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs at Chris Clark NFL and Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers here with you at BD Peacock is where you can find me on Twitter. And of course, you know where to find our podcasts daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So appreciate you making us your first listens, and shout out to all the everydayers that are listening with the Locked On Chiefs crew and Locked On 49ers alike. This episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Chiefs is brought to you by PrizePicks, as is all crossover Thursday episodes presented by PrizePicks. All you got to do is download the app right now at PrizePicks and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. How are you, Chris? We're making a habit of this, and regular season, February episode, so it's been kind of fun. It's good to talk to you again, and I see things are going swimmingly with the 5-0 Chiefs right now.
I don't know about swimmingly. They're going well enough that they're 5-0. This is fun. I really enjoy talking to you. It's a good time, and we don't get a chance to talk very often, except for when they seem to play in the Super Bowl and once every 2 or 3 years, I guess. So I'm looking forward to this one.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. And yeah, I feel like the 49ers and the Chiefs haven't played their optimal ball right now. The 49ers had a big win, had a little mini bye coming off a Thursday nighter at the Seattle Seahawks. Those road Thursday games are tough, and that was a huge one. That was the biggest game of the season for the 49ers so far, and might turn out to be the biggest game because if you want to get back to the Super Bowl, which the 49ers want to do, you got to win your division. That helps, and so the 49ers are back on that path at 3-3, even though they haven't quite played their best ball. Week 1, week 6 might have been their two best games of the season so far. They thumped the New England Patriots, but kind of everyone's doing that right now. And they're not a very good football team, so not much of a litmus test there. But the Chiefs, even though maybe not playing optimal ball, they're still 5-0, and they still find a way to win. And it's funny because a lot of what we've seen in both Super Bowls, 49ers able to get leads and then kind of just not finishing the job. And the Kansas City Chiefs seem like they're always able, no matter what the conversation is around the team, whether we're still trying to figure out what's going on at wide receiver. Shea Rice is out now. It led by the defense more than Mahomes' offense being the juggernaut for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a lot of the same conversations we were talking about going into the Super Bowl, Chris. And my listeners and a lot of people that break down the San Francisco 49ers like, okay, well, maybe this is when you can get the Chiefs because, things aren't exactly right on offense right now, but it's like we just went through this, right? And so it's kind of a very similar vibe for these two teams, in my opinion, right now as they meet in week 7.
No, it really is, and I think the big thing is nothing to throw shade at this game. It's a big game. The Chiefs are looking at this as their biggest game of the season so far, and maybe their biggest game that they're going to have this season. But I also will say that I do think that this team plays different in the regular season than they play in the postseason. So this maybe is the right time to get Kansas City. You're right. They don't have their offense going the way you would want it to. But, they're dealing with injuries. I mean, their top 2 wide receivers are down. Their, top running back is down. Right now, you're in a situation where you're just trying to figure out how you're going to continue to move the ball and score points. And you're doing it with guys that's, like Juju Smith-Schuster, who was gone the last time these teams played in the Super Bowl. And he'd been in New England for a year, and he comes back and has a huge game, in week 5 to help them win that game against New Orleans. I think that's going to continue, and they're going to have to continue to address and move things in the right way. I will say this: Andy Reid, I believe, is 24-3 coming off a bye. So I do think that plays into how this game is going to play out. This is going to be a great game, though. The 49ers, I agree with you. I think they look a lot better than they did in their other games that they've kind of struggled in. And Kansas City has now had 2 weeks to basically get prepared for this game and kind of self scout themselves to have an idea as to what is going on right now and how they can address it.
I mean, and Reed and Spagnuolo are no joke. And I've talked about this with the 49ers, and I think they do an awesome job against Kyle Shanahan's offense. And in a lot of ways, I think Kyle could learn from those two veteran coaches in the NFL. And even though Kyle's a veteran coach, it's really interesting how similar early career Andy Reid, who was the coach that couldn't win the big one,
Yep.
is kind of what Kyle Shanahan has become right now. And you hope you don't have to wait until Kyle's 60 years old to get that Lombardi for the 49ers.
Well, and somewhere else. That would be the other thing.
Team, right, exactly. If it holds up and he's the Eagles version of Andy Reid with the 49ers. So talking about the storylines there, and I kind of brought up that offense and how things are going. The questions I have for you with this team is, how have the Chiefs in the secondary replaced the big loss like L'Jarius Sneed? And then on the offensive side of the ball, who is the number one now at wide receiver? Like how is that offense running when you don't have your number one running back and you don't have your number one wide receiver now for the rest of the season?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think one thing that I would say is that Travis Kelce, I think everybody thought that he was maybe washed to start the season. I think that he's come on the past couple of weeks, and really since Rashee Rice went down, has shown that he's not a wash player. He is a guy that can still, have his way against teams and really take advantage of zone defenses and take advantage of guys trying to play a man and using his ability to get free. So I think when you look at what they're going to do and how they're attacking things, I think that Travis Kelce has always truly been their number one target. Number one receiver right now, probably I would say Xavier Worthy, although I think you could make an argument that maybe Juju steps into that role at least temporarily for a couple of weeks until Worthy gets a little bit more acclimated to the offense and into the NFL. The thing that I would say about Worthy is he's further ahead than Rashee Rice was last year. I'm not trying to say he's going to have the same season that Rice had, but he is further along than Rice was at this point last year. So I think that's a positive. And you look at L'Jarius Sneed, he's not playing great in Tennessee, and I don't think that that's necessarily just on Sneed. I think part of that's the defense and the way Spagnuolo was using him. But they've had a guy in Jalen Watson who's come back from injury and played pretty much lights out the entire season. I'm not going to say that he is an all-pro, but he is playing at a very, very high level, and a guy that is probably playing close to maybe a couple steps down, a couple small steps down from like a Trent McDuffie type, which obviously that's the Chiefs' other corner. So you have those two types of guys as your corners. I think you got to feel pretty good about who you're going up against.
That's why the coaching is so important. You get the New England Patriots vibes, because remember New England Patriots would, not pay famously a bunch of players on defense, and then they would go somewhere else and, oh yeah, you know what? That guy doesn't look as good anymore as he did when he was on the New England Patriots. And then the Patriots would magically find another guy that would fill in and look awesome again. And we're seeing that right now with Spagnuolo's defense with the Chiefs. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and you look at Juju. I mean, Juju is a great example. That he had a good year in Kansas City, didn't do anything with New England, came back. I'm not so sure that we're not going to see MVS on this roster. It may not be this week. It may end up being next week or the week after. But I wouldn't be surprised if MVS is starting on this team by week 10 or 11, and coming back after not having much of an impact in Buffalo, just because I think that he can step in and help the offense, and that's definitely something they're going to need at the receiver position.
You mentioned Xavier Worthy, and I got to imagine for a rookie, things come at you fast in the NFL. He has 5 games, then you can sit back, bye week. Andy Reid can kind of figure out how they want to do things here. And I just have a big feeling that Xavier Worthy is going to be a big factor in this game. They're going to try to find ways to get the ball in his hands and utilize his athletic ability, and probably having a bye week before this game gives them a big opportunity to find other ways to maybe get in the ball rather than the natural flow of the game.
Yeah, no, and I can't disagree with you on that. I do think that they're going to get him more involved, and I think that's going to be something they're going to have to do throughout the rest of the season. Is he has to become that guy that's going to be more than just a field stretcher, because at this point they don't have a choice. Justin Watson isn't going to get it done. He can't be a guy that's going to be a 6, 7, 8 target guy. You're going to need somebody on the offense that can do that. Juju may be able to have a couple of games like that, but I don't expect that he can do that the entire season. So you're going to have somebody step up, and I think Worthy's going to be that guy this year for the Chiefs. And obviously you're wishing that they had Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, but at this point you got to move on and try to do the best that you can with what you have.
Well, you still got Patrick Mahomes over there.
That's true.
who, by the way, is not the highest graded quarterback in the league according to Pro Football Focus. That belongs to Brock Purdy right now. So put a check mark on the quarterback side for the San Francisco 49ers in this one. If you're only listening on audio and you don't have the video, I'm saying that with a smile. Having some fun here. Brock Purdy's been phenomenal. More on Purdy, Mahomes, key matchups in this Week 7 game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs next. Today's episode is brought to you by Arena Club. And Chris, I know you do a little card collecting. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on that Patrick Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. And even if you love collecting, that's some serious money to drop thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com. Now, it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I just listed, like Patrick Mahomes rookie cards, Ellie, Luka rookies, those were hits from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and a clear hit rate for each one. Do you have any of those Patrick Mahomes rookie cards laying around, Chris, that you might be able to utilize when it's time for you to retire?
Yeah, I do have one, and it was pretty expensive. It wasn't quite $2,000, and it's not worth $2,000 right now. But I do have one of those Patrick Mahomes rookies, and actually, I had 3 of them. I think 4 of them, maybe. Sold a couple of them off, but they are expensive cards, and it is a big market, and there is a lot of different players out there. And basketball is probably even bigger than football, to be quite honest.
Card collecting's come a long way from my days collecting those 89 Topps cards. Arena Club slab packs revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. And after your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. So right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. The next segment of this crossover episode is brought to you by Gametime and Gametime Picks, which is a new feature that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. And Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. You want to go see Niners and Chiefs at Levi's Stadium, you can get some phenomenal last-minute deals, or you can get them early and use Gametime Picks so you don't have to look through, thousands of potential seats and find the ones that are suited for you. And not just NFL tickets either. All sporting events, of course, you can find at Gametime and on the Gametime app, but concerts and comedy shows and theater events as well. In fact, I got some last-minute tickets tonight. I went and saw one of my favorite bands that's in town. They added a second show. I only had tickets to one night. I got a great deal on some last-minute tickets. So you know what? I'm going to go again. I'm going to go 2 nights in a row. And if it wasn't for Gametime, I probably wouldn't have done it at the face value ticket price. So you can do the same, and all you got to do is download the Gametime app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LockedOnNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LockedOnNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Brian Peacock here of Locked On 49ers with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. It's an NFL Week 7 crossover episode. Biggest storylines, key matchups, the paths to victory for these two teams here in Week 7. The biggest storyline, actually, Chris, believe it or not, for the San Francisco 49ers, I think right now is just that this team needs to prove to itself that they can beat the Chiefs. Alex Smith was the quarterback for the Chiefs the last time the 49ers defeated the Chiefs 10 years ago, and it was the Harbaugh-led 49ers. So Kyle Shanahan's 0-for against the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously he's lost 2 times in the Super Bowl. The regular season matchups haven't really been that close. So I think this team, in a lot of ways, just for the psyche, needs to prove that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs, whether it's in the regular season or the Super Bowl. So I think that's probably the biggest storyline in this, and I'm guessing that it's in the minds of Kyle Shanahan and some of the players who have lost some of those big games. And I know for sure it's in the minds of fans because I'm hearing from them, and some there's a lack of confidence against Kansas City Chiefs right now. That's what the Chiefs have done to the league.
Well, and I think that's a huge deal. I mean, the one that I think about the most and is probably going to be George Kittle, just because him and Travis Kelce are so close, and you know that that's got to just be eating Kittle alive to be in that situation where he's been here and they can't beat Kansas City. So I definitely see that's a huge storyline for them. And the thing that I would say in that regard is I think that also probably plays into Kansas City's favor because of two different things. One, it's in the 49ers' heads that they haven't ever beat them. And two, you're putting more pressure on yourself because you feel like you have to do more to have a chance to beat them, which is not usually how you want to be playing a game.
Absolutely. And the way the 49ers weren't able to close out the Chiefs in either Super Bowl, and the way the 49ers have lost 2 games they shouldn't have this year, the Niners should be 5-1 coming into this game. And they had fourth quarter leads on the Rams and the Cardinals. They weren't able to close out those games. So they're going to be gripping it tight. And even if they're up 10 in the fourth quarter, I know every 49ers fan is going to be thinking the same thing. Oh, no, the boogeyman's on the other side. You can't let Patrick Mahomes have the ball last. How is Patrick Mahomes playing, by the way? Because I talked about the PFF grades. And you look at the metrics, not necessarily lighting up the scoreboard statistically is Patrick Mahomes right now, but he's still Mahomes, and the Chiefs are 5-0. So is it a situation where it's like, yeah, he could be playing better, or is it just like, nah, he's fine, he's doing his thing, and they're figuring out their offense right now?
I would say that the first 3 weeks of the season, I think this offense struggled because they had plans for Hollywood Brown to come in and be their star number 1 wide receiver. And I think that, he goes out before the season even starts and it completely changes everything that they prepared for in training camp. And I think I think that they were expecting to get him back week 1. He goes out, he can't come back. Now you're in a situation where Rashee Rice becomes the guy, which I think he has the ability to be your number 1 wide receiver. And then he goes out in week 4. So I'm not going to say Patrick's been playing well because he hasn't. I also think, and we're going to talk about this probably a little bit more when we start talking about matchups, but I also think he's been looking over his shoulder at the left tackle position and the left side of the offensive line and not trusting it. There's been times where he has been flushed out of the pocket, and that's because there's been a pass rush there. But there's also been times where he's jumped out of the pocket without even being flushed. And if he stood in the pocket or just stepped up as opposed to maybe running completely out of the pocket, that changes the angles that he can make throws on, and it probably changes what happens in the game as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's one of the big storylines in this game. We talked a little bit about it off the air, and being able to block Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa doesn't have a ton of sack production this year, but he's. I had Dalton Wasserman of PFF on the podcast yesterday, and so I freshly looked at a lot of the podcast grades, and he's phenomenal. He's one of the league leaders in pressures. He's a really good football player, and so. You got to get Nick Bosa blocked. Now, what's the right tackle situation look like? Because Nick Bosa has been almost exclusively lined up on the left side this year. He was a little bit more right side as a rookie and a younger player. Then he kind of moved around a lot. And then this year's been a little bit more on the left, and he'll go to the other side. But he's mostly been lining up on the left side. But obviously, there's other players on the 49ers defensive line, and it all starts up front. So talk to me about the rest of that offensive line. And famously, the 49ers traded with the Chiefs to allow them to go up one spot to get Kingsley Suamataia, who won the job as a rookie, which is a little surprising because he's a really raw player coming out of BYU. But then he subsequently got benched, right? So what are we looking at there in the offensive line?
So I think you're looking at Kingsley. Andy Reid did come out and say that Wanya Morris is going to continue to start at least for this week. So I think that's not going to change. That is going to be a position that they definitely are going to need help. If Bosa is going to be playing the other side, he's going to be going up against Jawan Taylor. And I actually like that matchup a lot more for Kansas City. Not saying that Taylor is going to be able to shut him down because I think Nick Bosa is he's easily a top 3 defensive end. I don't know where I would rank him without having to sit down and actually look at it and think about it, but he's easily a top 3 defensive end. And to me, Jawan Taylor is a lot better in pass protection than Wanya Morris is going to be. And they have generally kept Taylor on an island most of the time and let him do his thing. If you look at pass block efficiency, he is doing a lot better than the left side of the line for the Chiefs. And I think that is something that they're going to try to, would hope that they would do is keep Nick Bosa over there to go against Taylor. Cause I think that would actually help Wanya Morris in that regard. It's tough though. I mean, you look at the type of player Nick Bosa is, he's going to beat you at some point. The nice thing is if he's really playing and he's coming from that side, Patrick should be able to see him that's a good thing about it, because he's not, crashing down the line, behind you. So I think that would be a benefit as well. But I'm really going to be curious to see what Kansas City does. One of the things that I think is going to play, I think, a bigger factor than most people will give it credit for right now is Kansas City brought in a 4 tight end before week 5. They brought Jody Fortson back. And while it seemed like an odd move, they went and actually used 4 tight ends in the game against the Saints. And I'm not going to be surprised if they don't start using that more and going to more of a 13 and 14 personnel set at different times, especially considering when you look at how banged up they are at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, get some extra blockers out there, and we probably will see Bosa on both sides a little bit. He did beat Vikings left tackle Christian Darrisaw for a sack earlier this year, so he does move around a little bit, but just been on the left side a little bit more. Maybe the Niners want to try to exploit that a little bit more, although they do have Leonard Floyd who can rush the passer a little bit as well, opposite Nick Bosa. Next, I have one more key matchup, and whatever key matchups you have, Chris, you can drop them on me next. It's on the other line, the 49ers offensive line against Chiefs defensive line. Rookie Dominic Pooney versus one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. That should be a fun one. And we'll draw some paths to victory for the 49ers and the Chiefs Sunday next. The final segment of this Locked On Chiefs, Locked On 49ers crossover is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NFL fans right now can start big with a huge return at FanDuel, because you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And all you got to do is sign up at FanDuel.com or download the app to get America's #1 sportsbook. And by the way, when you get a little hunch in the middle of the 49ers Chiefs game, you want to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, you can find it all on the very same page that you're placing your bets at FanDuel.com. Niners favored by 1.5, by the way. I might have to talk a little bit more about that in a second. FanDuel.com, not only weekly lines, not only Niners, Chiefs, bet on the Niners or the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, offensive, defensive players of the year, prop bets, every sport out there. You can find all of the action. Just download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Chris, are you a little surprised that over at FanDuel.com, the San Francisco 49ers are favored by 1.5 over the Kansas City Chiefs?
Maybe a little bit. The 49ers are a great team. To me, it's not overly surprising. I don't think that they are the team that their record suggests that they are. And in some ways, I think you could argue that the Chiefs aren't the record that their record suggests that they are. They haven't played great through 5 weeks. They're still trying to figure it out on the opposite side of the ball, and defensively they've been great, and I think that's the reason they continue to win.
The stupid league went and gave the Chiefs a bye, though, before the 49ers, too. Niners fans are kind of mad about that right now, Chris, because not only the Chiefs have a bye before this game, next week the Niners play the hated Dallas Cowboys, that even though they've lost 2 Super Bowls to the Chiefs, Niners fans still hate the Cowboys a lot more. Cowboys have a bye before they play the Niners next week as well. So 49ers
I wouldn't worry about that near as much. The Cowboys defense is not good.
I mean, that team cannot stop the run, and that's game over against the Kyle Shanahan offense if that's the case, no matter who's running the football. I think we're going to get Jordan Mason back in this one. It was a 7 to 10 day injury. He's kind of day to day right now, limited in practice. Don't know for sure, but I have a feeling he's going to go. If not, might see a lot of Patrick Taylor and rookie Isaac Guerrero out there. But I got an inkling right now it's going to be Jordan Mason playing in that one. But it's the guys blocking in front of Jordan Mason that I'm most interested in, especially rookie Dominic Pooney. 3rd-round pick for the 49ers, has been phenomenal. Stepped in because of an injury and just completely stole the starting right guard away from Spencer Burford. And he's been unreal. The second best offensive lineman on the team after Trent Williams, obviously the future Hall of Famer at left tackle. But he's got a pretty big matchup here this week. And so talk to me about that Chiefs defensive line and how they operate against this San Francisco 49ers offensive line.
Well, I will say, I think Ryan would be really remiss and sad that he missed you saying that, because he is a Kansas fan, and Dominic Pooney is from KU. So I will have to let him know. I'll have to let me know you said that. And Pooney was a guy that we talked about a lot, actually, coming to Kansas City for just a backup swing type guy. So there was a lot of talk about him going into the season. You look at Chris Jones, and obviously, I think he's probably the best defensive tackle in the NFL right now. I don't think I saw a stat today. I think he has time to pressure of like 2.12 seconds, the fastest time to pressure in the NFL. And I mean, that's ridiculous. The one thing I will say, and this is going to be something that I think needs to continue to show its face and maybe show up even more, is Treshaun Wharton is a guy that was injured 2 years ago, came back from an ACL, didn't really do much last year. I mean, he played, but he wasn't really recovered from his ACL injury, and now he's back and he is causing havoc next to Chris Jones. And when you have two guys that can do that at that defensive tackle position, it is critical because you can start getting pressure on the quarterback, and you get pressure on the quarterback in front of him, in front of his face, as opposed to coming from behind and or around the corner. That's a huge benefit for the team. So I think that could be a big thing for this Chiefs defense trying to go up against the 49ers.
So, Chris, then paint the picture. What does a Chief victory look like on Sunday? How's this going to go?
Chiefs victory looks like them not turning the ball over. I've said this just about every single game this year. Problem is that they're at the bottom of the league in turnovers. When you start looking at turnover differential, they're not getting turnovers from the other team, and they're turning the ball over too much. So if they can, win the turnover battle, I think they have a great chance of winning this game. The other thing that I think is going to play a big part is if you go back and watch the first week of the season, they played Derrick Henry and they held him to 46 yards on 13 carries, 3.5 yards a carry. They haven't allowed any running back so far to have a good week against them this year. And I did not expect that. I was not expecting the run defense to be even better than it was last year. And now they're going up against Jordan Mason, who is the number 2 running back in the NFL when it comes to yardage rushing. So I think that's going to be a huge matchup, and something that if they can keep him under, between 50 to 75 yards, because I don't think that they're going to stop him. But I do think that if they can keep him to 50 yards, even if it's a little over 50 yards, if it's, still only 2 to 3 yards a carry, you've got to feel pretty good about that as a defense.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating if Jordan Mason can't go, if Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to lean too much on the rookie, if they go a little bit more aerial against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
But the Niners haven't had a problem getting points on the Chiefs, especially in the first halves. And, Kyle Shanahan's, scripted 25 plays or whatever it is, I think they're good there. It's the second half adjustments is what I point to. And Spagnuolo has been so good. Reed has been so good in that capacity. And so can the 49ers close out a game when they get a lead? That's just going to linger in my head. It's going to linger in every 49ers fan's head until they prove they can do it against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's not only been the Chiefs that's got them this year. It's happened twice. So close out the game. That is the path to victory for the 49ers. Obviously, you got to have a lead first before you can close it out. But I'm a believer in Kyle Shanahan's offense being able to put some points on the board. I think a banged up offense that we laid out here of the Kansas City Chiefs shouldn't provide too many problems for the 49ers, say jumping out on a big lead against the Niners that they have to try to come back from. Just stay in front of the sticks, run the ball a little bit. Don't get any of those obvious third down and longs so Chris Jones can go get after you. And to be honest with you, Chris Jones, it wasn't so much him just winning one-on-one matchups in the Super Bowl. It was protection busts. So, block the guy you're supposed to be blocking for the 49ers. And I think the 49ers will be all right. It's going to be a close game. I'm going to say the Niners slay the dragon, though, finally, and get one here and hold on. And who knows, they might be on their third kicker in 3 weeks. They brought in Anders Carlson because the guy who was replacing Moody, who's doubtful in this game, he got hurt too, Matthew Wright. So I don't even know who's kicking for the 49ers. And that's really been the thing that's killed the 49ers, if anything, this year. They're top 5 DVOA offense and defense, but they're 31 in the NFL special teams. And so they've got to be better there, and got to limit returns, kickoffs, and got to kick that thing through the uprights when they get the opportunity and finish the job.
Yeah, and Matthew Wright used to kick for Kansas City, so I was kind of thinking maybe he would have a chance to go up against his former team because he stepped in for Harrison Butker when Butker got hurt a couple years ago. So I'm really curious to see how this game plays out. I do think it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be a close game. You make a great point about San Francisco being great early on, and that is another thing that Kansas City struggles with is, generally speaking, in most games that they play, it seems like the first series, they've almost always allowed some kind of points. They didn't against the Saints this past game. They got an interception. But before that, it was either a touchdown or a field goal that was allowed on the first drive of the game. And if that starts kind of that way, but you go look at their defense after that, they start shutting teams down. They start adjusting. You're talking about adjustments at halftime. They start adjusting going into the second, third, fourth drive. They figure out, okay, this is what they're going to be doing to us, and they make adjustments to try to shut that down early. And I think that's a huge key as to why they've been successful so far.
It's going to be a good one. I can't wait. It's good on good. 49ers, Chiefs, week 7. We'll see how it all turns out. Man, put the ball in the end zone, though. Don't put it in the kicker's hands, the kicker's feet, as it were. Niners red zone woes has been another one, and they were able to kind of buck that trend last week against the Seahawks. So they got to keep that going and get 6 and not settle for the 3s. Can't wait to see how it all turns out. You guys follow Chris at Chris Clark NFL. And, of course, Locked On Chiefs daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm at BD Peacock. And, of course, me and Croc are doing Locked On 49ers every day. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. And make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And you'll hear from us post-game, Locked On 49ers, Locked On Chiefs. Talk to you then right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.